The purse hit the cobblestones with a sound like breaking teeth, and gold coins scattered across the night market street in a bright, rolling flood. Gianna Marsh didn't think. She dropped to her knees on the rain-slicked pavement and started gathering coins, her hands moving fast while the crowd surged around her. Others were doing the same, she noticed, but they were pocketing what they grabbed, slipping the gold into their own coats and bags. She watched a woman in expensive heels snatch 3 coins and walk away without breaking stride. A teenager in a hoodie collected a handful and vanished into the throng. The man who had dropped the purse was already 20 feet ahead, his long, dark coat disappearing into the press of bodies near the dumpling stall. Gianna shoved the coins she'd collected into her cardigan pocket and scrambled after him, scanning the ground as she went. There, another coin near a fruit cart, 2 more by the flower vendor. She grabbed them all, her nursing clogs squeaking on the wet stone. "Sir! Sir! Wait!" She pushed through the crowd, apologizing as she went. Her shift at the hospital had ended 2 hours ago, and she was exhausted. But something in her wouldn't let this go. It wasn't right. None of those people had earned that money. It wasn't theirs. The man stopped near the end of the market street, where the vendor stalls gave way to the old Gothic revival buildings that made this part of the city feel like a different century entirely. He turned slowly, and Gianna's breath caught. He was the most striking person she had ever seen. Tall, dressed in that long black coat over clothes that looked tailored and expensive, but it was his face that stopped her in her tracks. Porcelain pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight. Hair so white it was almost luminous, falling past his shoulders in a straight, elegant cascade. Eyes that were dark and fathomless and fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel suddenly, acutely visible. Beautiful. That was the only word for him. Beautiful in a way that didn't seem quite human. "You dropped this," Gianna said, slightly breathless from her chase. She pulled the coins from her pocket, a palm full of gold that glinted under the streetlights. "Your purse broke open back there. I think you lost a lot more than this, but most people just took it. I'm sorry. I tried to get what I could." The man stared at her. He didn't move to take the coins. He just looked at her with those dark, endless eyes, and Gianna felt heat rise in her cheeks. Is this not yours?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. "I saw it fall from your coat." "It's mine," he said, and his voice was like velvet over stone, cultured and ancient sounding. "But you're returning it." "Well, yes, it's yours. Only you would return it," he said softly, and something in his expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but a warming, a kindling of some emotion she couldn't name. "I watched them. Every person who picked up my gold pocketed it and walked away. Except you." Gianna shifted uncomfortably. "That doesn't make me special. It just makes me honest. Here." She held out her hand more insistently. This time he took the coins, his fingers brushing hers as he did. His skin was cool, smooth as marble. The contact sent a shiver up her arm that had nothing to do with the evening chill. "What's your name?" he asked. Gianna Marsh." "Gianna." He said it like he was tasting it, rolling it through his mouth. "I am Soren Ashvale." The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it suggested it should have. "Well, Mr. Ashvale, you might want to get a sturdier purse. That was a lot of money to lose." "I'm not concerned about the money," Soren said. His gaze hadn't left her face, and Gianna had the unnerving sense that he was memorizing her features. "Tell me, Gianna Marsh, what do you do? What keeps you in the city on a cold October evening?" "I'm a nurse. Night shift at St. Catherine's. I was just heading home." "A healer," he said, and now he did smile, just a slight curve of his mouth. "Of course you are." Gianna frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you have a rare heart," Soren said. "Rarer than you know. Tell me, where do you live? I would like to repay your honesty." Every sensible instinct Gianna had screamed at her not to tell this strange, too beautiful man where she lived. But something about him made her feel safe in a way she couldn't explain. Or perhaps it was the opposite. Perhaps it was danger that felt thrilling after a long shift of bedpans and medication charts. "I'm in Crescent Heights," she said, "the apartment building on Ashford Street, but you don't need to repay me. I didn't do anything special." You did something no one else did, Soren said. That makes it special. He reached into his coat and pulled out a card, pressed it into her hand. The cardstock was heavy, expensive, embossed with silver lettering. If you ever need anything at all, call this number. Gianna looked down at the card. It had his name and a phone number, nothing else. When she looked up again, Soren was already walking away, his coat billowing slightly in the wind that had started to gust through the narrow street. "Wait," she called. "I don't understand. Why would I need anything from you?" He glanced back over his shoulder, and the streetlight caught his eyes strangely, made them flash with some inner luminescence. "Because you showed me kindness," he said simply, "and because I am not a man who forgets his debts." Then he was gone, vanished around the corner into the darkness beyond the market street, and Gianna was left standing with his card in her hand and a strange, fluttering sensation in her chest. She walked home in a daze, barely noticing the familiar route through the city streets. Her apartment was small and cluttered, books and medical journals stacked on every surface, but it was hers, and she loved it. She set her keys in the bowl by the door and kicked off her clogs, then stood in the middle of her tiny living room staring at Soren Ashvale's card. He wasn't normal. She knew that with bone-deep certainty. Something about him had been fundamentally other. The pallor of his skin, the strange quality of his eyes, the way he moved with such liquid grace, and the way he'd spoken, formal and old-fashioned, like someone from another era entirely. Gianna set the card on her bookshelf, next to her collection of fantasy novels, and tried to put Soren Ashvale out of her mind. She failed. He came to the hospital 3 days later. Gianna was in the middle of checking vitals on a post-op patient when one of the other nurses, Melissa, stuck her head into the room. "Hey, G, there's someone at the desk asking for you. Says it's important." "I'm kind of busy here," Gianna said, noting down the patient's blood pressure. "Can they wait?" "I mean, he can, but I don't think you want him to. He's—" Melissa made a vague gesture. "Just come see." Curiosity won over protocol. Gianna finished her notes and stepped out into the hallway, following Melissa to the nurse's station, and stopped short. Soren stood by the desk, impossibly elegant in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the hospital. He wore a dark suit tonight, perfectly tailored, and his white hair was pulled back from his face. He looked like a Gothic prince transplanted into modern sterility, and every person in the hallway was staring at him. "Gianna," he said when he saw her, and his face softened in that strange way it had before, like she was something precious he hadn't expected to find. "Forgive the intrusion. I wanted to thank you properly." "You could have called," Gianna said weakly. "I could have," Soren agreed. "But I wanted to see you again." He held out a package wrapped in black paper and tied with a silver ribbon. "For you." Melissa was practically vibrating with curiosity beside her. Gianna took the package, acutely aware of the weight of everyone's stares. "You really didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," Soren said. "Open it when you have time. And Gianna, I would very much like to take you to dinner, if you're willing." Every sensible part of her brain said this was insane. She didn't know this man. He'd appeared out of nowhere, impossibly beautiful and strange, and now he was asking her out after one brief encounter in a night market. But the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the world, like she mattered. "Okay," Gianna heard herself say. "Yes, dinner would be nice." The smile that crossed Soren's face was radiant. "Tomorrow evening, I'll pick you up at 7. I don't finish my shift until 8. Then 8, he said smoothly. "I'm patient." He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that somehow seemed courtly and old-fashioned. "Until tomorrow, Gianna Marsh." He left the way he'd come, moving through the hospital corridors with that preternatural grace, and as soon as he was out of sight, Melissa grabbed Gianna's arm hard enough to bruise. "Who the hell was that?" she hissed. "And where did you find him? I want one." "I met him at the market," Gianna said faintly. "I returned his wallet." "And he tracked you down at work to ask you out? Girl, that's either incredibly romantic or incredibly creepy, and I can't decide which." "Both?" Gianna suggested. She looked down at the package in her hands. "I need to get back to my rounds." "You need to open that," Melissa countered. I'm dying here." They ducked into the break room, and Gianna carefully undid the ribbon and paper. Inside was a box, and inside the box was a necklace that made her breath stop in her throat. It was white gold, delicate as lace, with a pendant of black opal that caught the light and threw back shards of color. Purple, green, blue, all swirling in the dark depths of the stone. It was the most beautiful thing Gianna had ever seen, and certainly the most expensive. "Holy shit," Melissa breathed. "That's real, isn't it? That's actual gold and opal." "He can't give me this," Gianna said. "This is insane. I don't even know him." "Then get to know him," Melissa said practically. "And keep the necklace. If a man who looks like that wants to buy you jewelry, you say thank you and wear it to dinner." Gianna closed the box carefully. Her hands were shaking. "This is crazy." "Crazy," Melissa agreed cheerfully, "but also kind of amazing. You deserve something amazing, guy. You work yourself to death in this place. Go have dinner with your mysterious benefactor. See where it goes." But that night, alone in her apartment with the necklace on her dresser catching the lamplight, Gianna couldn't shake the feeling that she'd stepped into something far larger and stranger than a simple dinner date. She picked up her phone and did what she should have done days ago. She Googled Soren Ashvale. The results were sparse but telling. Ashvale was an old name, apparently, connected to some of the city's most exclusive social circles. There were mentions in society pages, always in the background of charity events and gallery openings. References to the Ashvale estate on the outskirts of the city, a sprawling Gothic mansion that was rarely photographed. But of Soren himself, there was almost nothing. No social media presence, no interviews, just glimpses in group photos, always slightly blurred, as if he existed on the edges of documentation. One article caught her attention. It was from a historical society newsletter discussing prominent families in the region. The Ashvales, it said, had been in the area for over 3 centuries. They were known for their reclusiveness and their wealth, both of which had persisted through generations without diminishment. 3 centuries. That was impossible, of course. Families didn't maintain that kind of continuous presence, that kind of unbroken wealth. There had to be explanations. Good investments, inherited fortunes, simple luck. But Gianna remembered the way Soren had moved, the way he'd spoken, the coolness of his skin, the strange, luminous quality of his eyes. She set down her phone and picked up one of the fantasy novels from her shelf. A vampire romance, ironically enough, one she'd read a dozen times. Fiction, of course. Pure escapism. Except, don't be ridiculous, Gianna told herself aloud. Vampires aren't real. But her hand went to the necklace box on her dresser, and she wondered. Soren picked her up precisely at 8 the next evening, driving a car that looked like it had rolled out of a luxury showroom approximately 10 minutes ago. Gianna had changed out of her scrubs into a simple black dress and the necklace he'd given her, and when Soren saw it around her throat, something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "You look exquisite," he said, handing her into the car with courtly care. "You look like you walked out of a painting," Gianna countered, and Soren laughed, a rich, warm sound that made her smile. He took her to a restaurant she'd only read about in the city magazine, the kind of place that required reservations months in advance and cost more per meal than she made in a week. The maitre d' greeted Soren by name and led them to a private booth in the back, all dark wood and soft lighting and the kind of hushed elegance that made Gianna feel simultaneously underdressed and special. "This is too much," she said when they were alone. "It's exactly enough," Soren replied. He leaned back in his seat, studying her with those dark, bottomless eyes. "Tell me about yourself, Gianna Marsh. Tell me everything." So she did. She told him about growing up in a small town upstate, about putting herself through nursing school, about the satisfaction she found in helping people even when the work was exhausting and thankless. She told him about her love of reading, about the small joys she found in the city, about her dreams of maybe, someday, traveling to see the places she'd only read about in books. And Soren listened with complete attention, as if every word she spoke was precious. He asked questions that showed he was really hearing her, not just waiting for his turn to talk. When the food came, he ordered things that sounded elaborate and French, and she noticed that he barely touched his own plate, but he watched her eat with what looked like deep contentment. "What about you?" Gianna asked finally, setting down her fork. "You know my whole life story now. Tell me about Soren Ashvale." Something shuddered in his expression, just for a moment. Then he smiled, but it was more careful now. "I'm afraid my life is far less interesting than yours. I manage my family's estate. I attend tedious social functions. I collect art and old books and try to find beauty in a world that often seems determined to be ugly." "That sounds lonely," Gianna said softly. Soren's gaze sharpened on her. "Yes," he said after a moment. "It is, or it was. Until 3 days ago, when a nurse with a rare heart chased me down a market street to return my gold." Heat rose in Gianna's cheeks. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Soren said, and his voice was intense now, burning with conviction. "They wouldn't. They didn't. I tested them, Gianna. I dropped that purse deliberately in a crowded place to see what people would do. I've lived a long time and known many people, and I've learned that most will take what they can get, honesty be damned, but not you. You ran after me in the rain to return money that wasn't yours. Do you know how extraordinary that is?" Gianna felt something tighten in her chest. "You tested people? That seems cynical," Soren supplied. "Perhaps. But experience has taught me to be cautious about who I allow into my life, and you." He reached across the table, took her hand in his cool one. "You passed every test without even knowing you were being tested. You're genuine, Gianna, real. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" She didn't pull her hand away. His touch was cool but not cold, and there was something comforting about it, grounding. "I'm not special," she said. "I'm just me." "Just you is more than enough," Soren said quietly. "In fact, just you is everything." They talked for hours, until the restaurant staff were clearly waiting for them to leave. Soren paid with a black credit card that had no visible limit and escorted Gianna back to his car. On the drive back to her apartment, she found herself watching him in profile. This impossibly beautiful man who had appeared in her life like something out of a story. "Soren," she said slowly, "can I ask you something? And will you be honest with me?" "Always," he said, and she believed him. "Are you normal? I mean, are you human?" He didn't flinch, didn't pretend to misunderstand. He just pulled the car over to the side of the road in a quiet area between streetlights and turned to face her fully. "No," he said simply. "I'm not human. I'm vampire, Gianna. I have been for over 300 years. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Gianna's hand went to the door handle instinctively, though she didn't open it. "Vampires are real. We are. We've always been real. We simply prefer to remain discreet." Soren's expression was calm, patient. "I won't hurt you. I would never hurt you. But I won't lie to you either. You asked for honesty, and that's what I'm giving you." "You drink blood," Gianna said, and her nurse's brain was already cataloging implications, bloodborne pathogens, hemoglobin levels, the biology of it. "I do, but I don't kill. We have suppliers, donors who are well compensated and carefully monitored. I haven't taken an unwilling life in 2 centuries. 2 centuries, Gianna repeated. The number was staggering. "How old are you?" 347, Soren said. "I was turned in 1679 in the court of King Charles II. I was a lord's son then, though that matters little now. Titles fade. Power persists." "Power," Gianna echoed. She thought about the way people had looked at him in the restaurant, the deference of the staff. "You're important. Among vampires, I mean." "I am the vampire king," Soren said quietly, "of the Eastern Dominion, which encompasses this city and 300 miles in every direction. I have ruled for over a century, since I challenged and defeated the previous king. I command loyalty from over 2,000 vampires and maintain the peace between our world and yours." The words should have sounded insane, but sitting in his car, with his dark eyes holding hers, Gianna knew he was telling the truth, every impossible word of it. Why tell me? She asked. If vampires are so secretive, why tell me what you are? Because I want you in my life, Soren said simply. And I won't have lies between us. Not after you showed me what true honesty looks like. You trusted me enough to return my gold, to wear my gift, to let me take you to dinner. The least I can do is trust you with the truth of what I am. Gianna sat back in her seat, mind reeling. Vampires. Vampires were real. The man, the king, sitting next to her was a 300-year-old vampire who ruled an empire she'd never known existed. I need to think, she said. It's a lot. Of course, Soren said immediately. He started the car again and drove her home in silence. When they reached her building, he walked her to the door with that same courtly care. I know I've given you much to consider. Take all the time you need. But Gianna... He cupped her face gently in his cool hands. Know that I am drawn to you in a way I haven't been drawn to anyone in decades. Your honesty, your kindness, your light. You fascinate me, and if you'll allow it, I would very much like to continue seeing you. Even though I'm human, Gianna said. Especially because you're human, Soren replied. You remind me of the best parts of humanity, the parts I sometimes forget exist after centuries of politics and power games. You're real, Gianna, and that's more precious than you know. He kissed her forehead softly and was gone, moving with that inhuman speed, vanishing into the shadows before Gianna could even react. She went inside and sat on her couch in the dark, touching the necklace at her throat. Vampire. Soren was a vampire. A king. And he wanted her. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was the most thrilling thing that had ever happened to her. She called him the next day. I want to see you again, she said when he answered. But I have questions. So many questions. Ask me anything, Soren said, and the warmth in his voice made her smile. I'm yours to question. They met in a park near the river, in the evening when the autumn sun was just setting. Soren sat beside her on a bench, and Gianna asked him everything she could think of. How vampirism worked, how he fed, what the vampire world looked like, the politics, the rules, the hidden society that existed beneath the one she knew. Soren answered everything patiently, painting a picture of a world she'd never imagined. Vampire courts that met in underground chambers beneath old buildings. A hierarchy of power based on age and strength. Laws that governed interaction with humans, designed to keep their existence secret. And at the top of it all, kings like him, who maintained order and settled disputes. It's not all darkness and danger, he said. There's beauty too. Art that takes decades to complete. Music that spans centuries. Relationships that endure beyond human lifetimes. We're not monsters, Gianna. We're simply different. But you could be monsters, Gianna said. You have the power to be. Anyone has the power to be a monster, Soren replied. Human or vampire. It's the choice not to be that matters. And I choose every day to be something better than what my nature demands. Gianna studied him, this ageless being beside her on a park bench. Why me? She asked. I'm nobody, just a nurse. Why does a vampire king care about someone like me? Because you're good, Soren said simply, and I've lived long enough to know how rare that is. Goodness, real goodness, not the performance of it, but the genuine article, is the rarest thing in any world. And you have it in abundance. That night in the market, you could have walked away. You could have kept my gold, and I never would have known. But you didn't. You chased me down to return what was mine, expecting nothing in return. That kind of integrity. He shook his head slowly. That's worth more than any power I possess. I think you're idealizing me, Gianna said. I'm not some perfect person. I'm flawed and messy, and I make mistakes. You're human, Soren said. Of course you're flawed, but your flaws don't diminish your goodness, Gianna. They make it more real, more valuable. He took her hand again, that cool touch that was becoming familiar. I would like to court you properly if you'll allow it. I know the situation is unusual, but I promise you this. I will never lie to you, never use my power to compel you, never make you anything less than my equal in every way that matters. I may be a king, but with you, I'm simply Soren, a man, or once man, who finds himself captivated by your light. Gianna's heart was pounding. This was insane. She was a 26-year-old nurse from nowhere, and a vampire king wanted to court her. But when she looked into Soren's eyes, she saw only sincerity and warmth, and something that looked dangerously close to devotion. "Okay," she said, "let's try this. But slowly. I need time to adjust to all of this." "We have all the time in the world," Soren said, and his smile was radiant. Over the next weeks, Soren became a fixture in Gianna's life. He met her after her shifts, walked with her through the city, showed her pieces of his world. He took her to a vampire-owned gallery where the art was centuries old and breathtaking. He introduced her to his closest confidant, a vampire named Lucien, who served as his second-in-command and looked at Gianna with barely concealed curiosity. "A human," Lucien said in Gianna's hearing, his tone neutral. "You honor us with your presence, Gianna Marsh." "I'm just visiting," Gianna said, suddenly nervous. "No," Lucien replied, glancing at Soren. "I don't think you are." Soren had taken Gianna to his estate on their fourth date, driving through the city outskirts into rolling hills that still held hints of old forest. The mansion rose from the landscape like something out of a Gothic novel, all stone and spires and leaded windows. Inside it was elegant and luxurious, filled with art and antiques that spoke of centuries of careful collection. "This is where you live?" Gianna breathed, standing in the grand entrance hall. "This is one of my properties," Soren said. "But yes, I call it home. Do you like it?" "It's incredible," Gianna said honestly. "It's like stepping back in time." "I've never been good at letting go of the past," Soren admitted. "It's a vampire failing. We accumulate centuries and can't quite bring ourselves to discard any of it." He showed her his library, a 2-story room with floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books in a dozen languages. His art collection, featuring works by painters Gianna recognized from museums. His music room, with instruments from every era of his long life. And slowly, carefully, he showed her his heart. Soren was different from any man Gianna had ever known. He was confident, commanding, used to being obeyed. But with her, he was gentle, patient. He listened when she talked about her work, asked thoughtful questions about the patients she couldn't save and the small victories she celebrated. He brought her flowers from his garden and first-edition books from his library. He made her laugh with dry observations about modern life and taught her to dance in his empty ballroom. And Gianna found herself falling, slowly at first, then all at once, tumbling headlong into love with this ancient being who looked at her like she was the sun itself. "I'm in trouble," she told Melissa one day at work. "I'm falling for him so hard, and I don't know if I can come back from this." "Then don't," Melissa said simply. "Gee, I've known you for 3 years, and I've never seen you this happy. If he makes you feel this way, and if he treats you right, then who cares if he's different? Love is love." But there were complications Melissa didn't know about, couldn't know about, because Soren was not just a man, and his life was not just his own. He ruled a kingdom of vampires, and that meant responsibilities and expectations Gianna was only beginning to understand. She learned about it one evening in his library, curled up beside him on a velvet sofa while rain drummed against the windows. Soren had been quiet all evening, more reserved than usual, and finally Gianna set down her book and touched his hand. "What's wrong?" she asked. "You've been distant tonight." Soren was silent for a long moment, staring into the fireplace. Then he said very quietly, "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you weeks ago, but I was a coward. I didn't want to risk losing you." Dread coiled in Gianna's stomach. "What is it?" "I am bound by a blood oath," Soren said slowly, "to the House of Corvina, one of the oldest and most powerful vampire families in the region. 20 years ago, when there was threat of war between our territories, I swore an oath of alliance sealed in blood. And part of that oath, part of it was a promise of marriage between myself and Katerina Corvina, the house's heir. The world seemed to stop. Gianna pulled her hand back from his as if burned. You're engaged. Bound by oath, Soren corrected, but his voice was anguished. It's not the same as human engagement. It's older, more rigid. A blood oath cannot be simply broken. To violate it would mean war, Gianna. Hundreds of deaths, chaos throughout the Dominion. But you're still bound to marry someone else, Gianna said, and her voice sounded strange to her own ears. You're committed to another woman. I don't love her, Soren said urgently, turning to face her fully. I've never loved her. It was a political arrangement, made before I ever imagined I would meet someone like you. Katerina knows this. The oath was about peace, not love. Does it matter? Gianna asked, and tears were burning her eyes now. You're still going to marry her. You have to, or people die. So what are we doing, Soren? What is this? This is everything, Soren said fiercely. He took her face in his hands, gentle despite the desperation in his voice. This is the first real thing I've felt in decades. You are the first person who has made me feel alive in longer than I can remember. I know the situation is impossible. I know I'm asking you to accept something unfair and painful. But I'm begging you, Gianna, don't walk away. Let me find a solution. Give me time to find an honorable way out of this oath. There is no honorable way out, Gianna said, pulling back from him. You said it yourself. Breaking the oath means war. You're the king. You can't just put your desires above the safety of your people. I won't accept that, Soren said. There has to be a way. Oaths have conditions, terms that can be examined. Let me research this. Consult with the ancient texts. I will find a way to be with you that doesn't betray my word or my people. Gianna stood, wrapping her arms around herself. I need to go. I need to think. Gianna, please. You should have told me, she said, and the hurt in her voice was palpable. You should have told me from the beginning that this could never be real, that we could never have a future. It can be real, Soren said, standing as well. It is real. What I feel for you is the realest thing in my existence. But it doesn't matter, Gianna said, and a tear spilled down her cheek. Because at the end of the day, you belong to someone else, and I can't be the other woman, Soren. I can't be your mistress while you marry another woman for politics. I won't do that to myself, and I won't do it to her. Katerina wouldn't care, Soren began, but Gianna cut him off. I would care. The words came out sharper than she intended. I care. I deserve more than pieces of someone's life, Soren. I deserve to be someone's whole world, not their secret consolation prize. Soren looked stricken. You are my whole world. Then prove it, Gianna said. Find a way out of this oath, but until you do, I can't keep doing this. It hurts too much. She walked out of the library, out of the mansion, into the rain. Soren didn't follow her, which somehow made it worse. She called a taxi from the end of his long driveway and cried the entire way home. The next week was agony. Gianna threw herself into work, picking up extra shifts until she was barely sleeping. Melissa watched her with worried eyes but didn't push. And Soren called, texted, left messages that Gianna couldn't bring herself to listen to. She loved him. That was the terrible truth of it. She had fallen completely in love with him, and now her heart was breaking because she couldn't have him. Not really. Not the way she wanted. On the 8th day, Lucian appeared at the hospital. Gianna was on break, drinking terrible coffee in the staff room when he knocked on the door frame. Miss Marsh, he said formally, may I speak with you? If Soren sent you, I don't want to hear it, Gianna said tiredly. Soren doesn't know I'm here, Lucian said, stepping into the room. He was tall and lean, with the same alabaster skin and white hair that marked Soren's kind, though his hair was shorter, more modern. In fact, he would probably be quite angry if he knew. But I felt you should understand what's happening. Gianna set down her coffee. What do you mean? Soren has been locked in his library for 8 days, Lucian said quietly. He's searching every text, every record, every ancient law he can find, looking for a way to honorably dissolve his oath to House Corvina without triggering war. He hasn't fed, he hasn't slept, he's driving himself to the edge of madness, trying to find a solution. There isn't one, Gianna said. He said so himself. Perhaps, Lucian agreed, but that won't stop him from looking. Gianna, I've served Soren for over 70 years. I've never seen him like this. He's always been controlled, calculating, a strategist. But you've undone him completely. He's obsessed with finding a way to keep you. Love shouldn't require obsession, Gianna said quietly. No, Lucian said. But in this case, the obsession comes from a good place. He wants to keep his honor and have you. For a man like Soren, a king who has built his entire existence on integrity and duty, that's an impossible equation. But he's trying anyway. For you. Gianna felt tears prick her eyes again. I don't want him to destroy himself. Then help him, Lucian said simply. Go to him, talk to him. Even if you can't resolve this, don't leave him to spiral alone. He needs you, Gianna. Whether or not you choose to stay with him, he needs to hear your voice. After Lucian left, Gianna sat alone in the break room for a long time. Then she pulled out her phone and finally listened to Soren's messages. His voice was rough, exhausted. Gianna, I'm sorry. I should have told you from the beginning. I was selfish. I wanted you so badly that I ignored the complications. Please call me back. Please give me a chance to fix this. Another message. I found something in the archives, a precedent from the 15th century. I don't know if it applies, but I'm researching further. I will find a way. I promise you. Another. It's been 4 days. I'm starting to fear you won't forgive me. If that's true, I'll accept it. But know that you were right. You deserve someone's whole world, and you have mine. You've had it since the moment you ran after me in the rain to return my gold. The last message was from earlier that day. I think I found something. A clause in the oath about violations of good faith. If I can prove it applies, Gianna, I think there might be a way. Call me. Please. Gianna's hands were shaking. She finished her shift in a daze, and then, instead of going home, she drove to Soren's estate. It was past midnight when she arrived, but the lights were on in the library windows. She let herself in with the key he'd given her weeks ago and made her way through the silent house. She found him exactly as Lucian had described, surrounded by books and scrolls and manuscripts, his white hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes despite his immortal nature. He was bent over a massive leather tome, making notes in the margins, and he looked up sharply when she entered. Gianna, he breathed, and the naked relief on his face made her heart ache. Lucian came to see me, she said quietly. He's worried about you. I'm fine, Soren said, but it was clearly a lie. He looked exhausted in a way she hadn't thought vampires could be. You haven't fed in over a week, Gianna said. That's not fine. I've been busy. Soren gestured at the books around him. And I think I've found something. Gianna, the oath has a clause. It requires good faith from both parties. If either house violates the spirit of the agreement, the oath can be dissolved without penalty. Gianna moved closer, studying the ancient text he was pointing to. It was written in what looked like Latin, dense and formal. Can you prove House Corvina violated it? I'm working on it, Soren said. His voice was hoarse, desperate. There have been incidents over the years, small things mostly, border disputes they provoked, trade agreements they undermined, nothing major, but a pattern. If I can document it, present it to the council, I might have grounds to dissolve the oath. Might, Gianna repeated. It's the best chance I have, Soren said. He stood, swayed slightly. Gianna caught his arm, steadying him. I won't give up on us, Gianna. I can't. You're the best thing that's happened to me in 3 centuries. I'll find a way. Not if you kill yourself first, Gianna said firmly. When was the last time you fed? I don't need much, every few weeks usually. It's been 8 days of intense stress and no rest. You need blood. She made a decision. Take from me. Soren recoiled as if she'd struck him. No, absolutely not. Why not? You said you have donors. Willing donors who are prepared and compensated, Soren said. Not you, never you. I won't risk you like that. I'm a nurse, Gianna said. I know what I'm doing, and I trust you. She met his eyes steadily. I love you, Soren. I'm still angry about the situation, and we still need to figure this out. But I love you, and I'm not going to stand here and watch you suffer when I can help. Something in Soren's expression cracked. You love me. Of course I love you, Gianna said softly. I've been in love with you for weeks. Why do you think this hurts so much? Soren crossed the distance between them in an instant, pulling her into his arms. He was shaking. I love you, he said against her hair. I love you more than I have ever loved anything. You are my light, Gianna Marsh, my hope, my reason. Gianna held him tight, this ancient, powerful being who was trembling in her arms. Then let me help you. Please. Finally, Soren nodded. He led her to the sofa, seated her carefully. I'll be gentle, he promised. It won't hurt. I know, Gianna said. She trusted him absolutely. Soren knelt beside her, took her wrist in his hands. His fingers found her pulse point, and then he leaned in. Gianna felt a sharp sting, quickly fading to warmth. Soren's lips were cool against her skin, his hair falling forward to brush her arm. It was intimate in a way she hadn't expected, vulnerable and trusting. After what felt like minutes, but was probably less, Soren pulled back. His eyes were brighter now, more alert, and color had returned to his pale cheeks. He held a cloth to her wrist, applied pressure until the bleeding stopped. Thank you, he said quietly. That was a gift. We're in this together, Gianna said. If we're going to fight for a future, we do it together. That means you taking care of yourself. Yes, Soren agreed. He smiled, tired but genuine. Together. Over the next weeks, they fell into a pattern. Gianna came to the estate whenever she wasn't working, helping Soren research and organize his evidence. She learned about vampire law, about the intricacies of blood oaths and ancient compacts, and she met more of Soren's world. Katerina Corvina herself came to call. She was beautiful in the way all old vampires seem to be, tall and elegant with silver white hair and eyes like chips of ice. She sat in Soren's drawing room with perfect posture and studied Gianna with open curiosity. So you're the human who has captured our king's heart, she said. Her accent was old, European. How unexpected. Lady Corvina, Soren said, and his voice had taken on the formal tone he used when conducting official business. I appreciate you accepting my invitation. I was curious, Katerina said. Your message mentioned dissolving our oath. That's not a small matter. I'm aware, Soren said. He laid out his case methodically, showing her the documentation he'd compiled, instances where House Corvina had violated the spirit of their agreement, border provocations, trade interference, small betrayals that added up to a pattern. Katerina listened without expression. When Soren finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, You've been thorough. I've been honest, Soren corrected. These violations happened, Katerina. You know they did. My father's work, mostly, Katerina said. He was never as committed to the peace as I am. But you're not wrong. We have bent the rules, shall we say, tested boundaries. Then you'll support my petition to the council? Soren asked. Katerina's gaze moved to Gianna. You truly love her. This isn't some passing fancy. I love her more than my own existence, Soren said quietly. She's my equal in every way that matters, my partner. If I cannot have her, then I don't want anything. Dramatic, Katerina observed, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. But I believe you. She stood gracefully. I won't oppose your petition, Soren. In fact, I'll support it. The truth is, I never wanted this marriage either. I have my own attachments, my own heart to follow. An arranged bond was always a burden, not a blessing. Relief crashed through Gianna like a wave. Soren stood as well, inclining his head formally. Thank you, Katerina. Your support means— Don't thank me yet, Katerina interrupted. The council will require more than my agreement. They'll want assurance that peace between our houses will hold without the marriage bond. You'll need to offer something else, some guarantee. What do you suggest? Soren asked. Katerina looked at Gianna again, assessing. Her. You're human. She's the reason you're breaking the oath, yes? Then let her be the new foundation of it. A different kind of alliance. I don't understand, Gianna said. You will, Katerina promised, if you survive the council meeting. She swept toward the door, then paused. Soren? For what it's worth, I hope you get your happy ending. You deserve it. You've been a good king. After she left, Gianna turned to Soren. What did she mean if I survive the council meeting? Soren's expression was grim. The council will want to meet you, to judge whether a human is worthy of breaking a blood oath over. It won't be easy, Gianna. They'll question you, test you. Some of them still view humans as prey, not equals. But you'll be there, Gianna said. I'll be there, Soren confirmed. But I'll be the one on trial as much as you, a king asking to break an oath for love. It's unprecedented, radical. Some will see it as weakness. Then we'll show them its strength, Gianna said firmly. Love isn't weakness, Soren. It's the bravest thing anyone can do. Soren pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers. How did I find you? He murmured. How did I get so impossibly lucky? You dropped your purse, Gianna said with a smile, and I was honest enough to give it back. The council meeting was held in an underground chamber beneath the oldest building in the city, a cathedral that had been standing for over 400 years. Soren escorted Gianna down stone steps that seemed to go on forever, into a vast space lit by what looked like hundreds of candles. The council was assembled in a semicircle, 7 ancient vampires who looked like they'd been carved from marble. Katerina was there, representing House Corvina. Lucian stood behind Soren's empty seat. And in the center, an ancient vampire who looked like death itself sat on a throne of black stone. That's Magnus, Soren murmured to Gianna. He's over 1,000 years old, the eldest among us. He'll preside over the hearing. Magnus's eyes, colorless and terrible, fixed on Gianna. A human, he said, and his voice was like wind over gravestones. In our sanctum, bold King Soren. Necessary, Soren replied. He led Gianna to the center of the chamber, stood beside her. Council, I come before you to petition for the dissolution of my blood oath to House Corvina on the grounds of repeated violation of good faith. He presented his evidence methodically, with the same thoroughness he'd shown Katerina. The council listened in silence. When he finished, Magnus leaned forward slightly. The evidence is compelling, he said, but it raises questions. If House Corvina has been violating the oath for years, why bring it up only now? Because now I have reason to, Soren said, because I've found something worth fighting for. The human, Magnus said. His gaze raked over Gianna. What is your name, girl? Gianna Marsh, she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. And why should a blood oath, sworn to prevent war, be dissolved so that our king can indulge in a romance with a mortal? The question was sharp, cutting. Because love matters, Gianna said. Because choosing someone, really choosing them, is worth more than any forced alliance. Your king could have lied. He could have married Lady Katerina and kept me as a secret. But he didn't. He's standing here, in front of all of you, asking to do this honorably. If that's not proof of his integrity, I don't know what is. Pretty words, another council member said. But what do you offer us, human? What value do you bring that justifies upending centuries of tradition? Gianna took a breath. This was the moment Katerina had warned her about. I offer myself as a bridge between our worlds. I'm a healer, a nurse. I see the vulnerable every day, humans who would never normally encounter your kind. If you're worried about maintaining secrecy, about preventing conflicts, then having someone who understands both sides could be valuable. You propose to be what? Magnus asked. An ambassador? A peacekeeper, Gianna said. A liaison. Someone who can help ensure that the treaty between vampires and humans stays strong. Someone who can vouch for your king's integrity in the human world and vouch for human decency in yours. Silence fell. The council members looked at each other, some calculation happening that Gianna couldn't follow. Finally, Katerina spoke. I support this petition. House Corvina has violated the spirit of our oath, and King Soren has documented it fairly. Moreover, I believe his choice of partner shows wisdom, not weakness. A king who can love this deeply, this honestly, is one who will fight just as hard for his people. And if we deny the petition? Another council member asked. What then, King Soren? Soren's expression was calm, but his voice was steel. Then I will fulfill the oath as sworn. I will marry Lady Katerina and do my duty. But I will also know that this council values tradition over truth, politics over justice, and that knowledge will color every decision I make going forward. It was not quite a threat, but close. The implication was clear. Force this, and you'll lose my full loyalty. Magnus was silent for a long time. Then he said, The human has courage. I'll grant her that. Standing before this council, arguing for love. It's been centuries since I saw such conviction. He looked at Soren. You're certain of her? Completely certain? I've never been more certain of anything, Soren said. Then I vote to dissolve the oath, Magnus said. The violations are documented. The alternative alliance has merit, and I am old enough to remember when vampires married for love, not just politics. Perhaps it's time we remembered that lesson. One by one, the other council members voted. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. By 5 votes to 2, the blood oath between Soren and House Corvina was dissolved. Gianna's knees went weak with relief. Soren caught her arm, steadied her. It's done, he murmured. You're safe. We're safe. But Magnus wasn't finished. There is one condition, he said. Gianna Marsh, you have offered yourself as a bridge between worlds. The council accepts that offer. You will serve as liaison between the Vampire Council and the human authorities who know of our existence. You will help maintain the peace. And in recognition of this service, we offer you a choice. What choice? Gianna asked. To remain human and live your mortal span. Or to be turned, to join us as an immortal, and serve for centuries rather than decades. The choice is yours, but it will be binding. Gianna looked at Soren. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the hope in his eyes. The desperate, barely contained hope. If I'm turned, she said slowly, I lose my family, my human friends, my entire life. You would, Magnus agreed, but you would gain eternity with your king, and you would have the power to protect both worlds, not just mediate between them. Gianna thought about her little apartment, her shifts at the hospital, the life she'd built for herself. It was small, but it was hers. Then she thought about Soren, about centuries of conversations, of learning, of love, about being strong enough to truly make a difference in both worlds. I choose turning, she said, but on one condition of my own. I want to say goodbye to my family first, really say goodbye in a way that gives them closure. Can you give me that? 2 weeks, Magnus said. Then you return here and we'll perform the ritual. 2 weeks, Gianna agreed. The council dismissed them, and Soren led her out of the chamber in silence. They didn't speak until they were back above ground, standing in the cathedral's shadowed courtyard. Then Soren pulled her into his arms and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. You chose me, he said, his voice broken with emotion. You chose eternity with me. I chose us, Gianna corrected. I chose the future we can build together. Was that the right choice? It's the choice I hoped for, but never dared ask for, Soren said. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Are you certain, truly certain, because once it's done there's no going back? I'm certain, Gianna said. I love you, Soren, and I want forever with you. I want to see the world change, to help shape it. I want to stand beside you, not behind you, as your equal. Always my equal, Soren promised. He kissed her then, soft and reverent and full of promises. We'll do this right. You'll have time to say goodbye, to make peace with your choice, and then we begin our eternity. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, dreamlike blur. Gianna gave notice at the hospital. citing a relocation for a new opportunity. She visited her parents upstate, spent 3 days with them, laughing and talking and memorizing every detail of their faces. She told them she was moving abroad for work, that she'd be out of contact for a while. It hurt to lie, but the truth was impossible. She said goodbye to Melissa over coffee, and her friend hugged her tight. "Promise you'll email," Melissa said. "Promise you won't forget about me." "Never," Gianna said, and meant it. Even if she couldn't explain the truth, she would find ways to stay connected, to let the people she loved know she was happy. She gave away most of her belongings, keeping only a few precious things: photos, her grandmother's necklace, the first edition book Soren had given her. She packed them carefully and brought them to the estate, where Soren had prepared rooms for her. "These will be yours," he said, showing her a suite that was larger than her entire apartment. "Your space. I want you to feel at home here." "Home is wherever you are," Gianna said, but she appreciated the gesture. She set up her few possessions carefully, making the space her own. On the night before the turning, Soren made her dinner. He didn't eat, but he cooked for her, a skill he'd apparently learned in the 17th century. They sat together in his dining room, and Gianna savored every bite, knowing it would be among her last meals as a human. "Are you afraid?" Soren asked quietly. "A little," Gianna admitted. "But mostly I'm excited. Is that strange?" "It's perfect," Soren said. "You're perfect." He reached across the table, took her hand. "I'm going to spend the rest of eternity showing you how much I love you. Fair warning." "I can live with that," Gianna said with a smile. That night, she slept in Soren's bed, wrapped in his cool arms. She didn't sleep much, too aware that this was her last night as fully human. But Soren held her through the dark hours, whispering promises and plans and dreams. "We'll travel," he said. "I'll show you everything. Paris, Venice, Cairo. We'll see the dawn over the Sahara and the sunset over the Pacific. We'll collect centuries of memories together. And we'll help people," Gianna added. "That's part of this too. I didn't agree to be a liaison just to get past the council. I meant it. I want to make a difference." "We will," Soren promised. "Together." The turning ritual was held in the same underground chamber where the council had met. But this time, it was only Soren, Gianna, Magnus, and Lucien present. Magnus would oversee the ritual, Lucien would serve as witness, and Soren would be the one to turn her. "It will hurt," Magnus warned Gianna. "The change is not gentle. Your body must die to be reborn, but it will pass, and when you wake, you will be immortal." "I understand," Gianna said. She was calmer than she'd expected, settled in her choice. Soren looked at her one more time. "Last chance to change your mind." "Not a chance," Gianna said firmly. "I'm yours, now and always." Soren smiled, radiant and loving. Then he pulled her close, tilted her head back, and struck. The pain was immediate and all-consuming, fire in her veins, burning her from the inside out. Gianna gasped, tried to scream, but Soren held her steady, murmuring soothing words she couldn't quite hear over the roaring in her ears. She felt her heartbeat slow, stutter, stop, felt her lungs cease their desperate gasping, felt herself die in Soren's arms, and then, after an eternity compressed into moments, she felt herself reborn. Gianna opened her eyes. The world was different, sharper. Every detail in crystal clarity, every scent distinct and identifiable. She could hear Lucian's breathing across the room, Magnus's ancient stillness, the whisper of air through the ventilation system. And she could feel Soren. Not just physically, but deeper. A bond that hadn't been there before, tying them together like a silver thread. "Welcome back," Soren said softly. He was smiling, but there were tears on his face. "How do you feel?" Gianna tested her new body. She felt strong, powerful, alive in a way she'd never been before. "Incredible," she breathed. "Is it always like this?" "The clarity fades a bit," Soren said. "You learn to filter it, but the strength, the power, that remains. You're one of us now, Gianna. A vampire, my mate, my queen." Gianna stood, and the movement was effortless, graceful. She looked down at her hands and saw that her skin had taken on that same porcelain quality, pale and smooth. When she found a mirror, she saw that her hair had lightened several shades, not quite white but close. Her eyes were darker, deeper. She looked like she belonged to Soren's world now. "Beautiful," Soren said from behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "You're so beautiful." "We match now," Gianna said with a smile. "Both pale and dramatic. Both eternal," Soren corrected. "Both bound together for as long as we choose. And I choose forever." "Forever," Gianna agreed. She turned in his arms, kissed him deeply. The kiss felt different now, sharper and more intense. She could taste him in ways she'd never been able to before, could feel the bond between them humming with satisfaction. Magnus cleared his throat delicately. "If you two are finished, there's the matter of formalities. Gianna Marsh, as a newly turned vampire and mate to our king, you'll need to be formally presented to the court. And there's the matter of the new alliance to finalize." "The alliance," Gianna said, pulling reluctantly back from Soren. "Right, between your people and the human authorities. We've arranged a meeting," Magnus said. 3 days from now, the human officials who know of our existence have agreed to meet with the council to discuss terms. You'll represent both sides as agreed." It was surreal stepping into this new role, but over the next days, Gianna found her footing. She met with the council, learned the intricacies of vampire politics and law, and she met with the human officials, a select group who knew the truth about vampires and worked to maintain the secret. The meeting itself was tense at first, both sides wary and uncertain, but Gianna found that her unique position gave her credibility with both. She was human enough to understand their fears, vampire enough to represent the council's interests. She could translate concerns, bridge gaps, find common ground. And at the center of it all was the truth that had started everything: honesty. The same honesty that had made her return Soren's gold now became the foundation of a new peace. Because Gianna wouldn't lie, wouldn't obscure or manipulate. She laid out the facts plainly, answered every question, and trusted both sides to be reasonable. And they were. By the end of the meeting, a new accord was signed. Vampires would maintain their secrecy and adhere to strict laws about feeding and interaction with humans. Humans would provide support where needed and refrain from hunting or prosecuting vampires who followed the rules, and Gianna would serve as the bridge between them, the liaison who could be trusted by both. It was historic, unprecedented, and it had all started because one girl had been honest enough to return lost gold. Afterward, there was a celebration at Soren's estate. The vampire court assembled, elegant and otherworldly, filling the mansion with music and laughter. Katerina was there, chatting with Lucien about trade agreements. Magnus presided from a corner, looking almost amused. And at the center of it all, Soren and Gianna stood together, his arm around her waist. "How does it feel?" Soren asked quietly, his breath cool against her ear. "To be queen?" "Terrifying and wonderful," Gianna admitted. "I keep waiting to wake up and find this was all a dream." "It's real," Soren promised. "All of it. You're mine, I'm yours, and we have eternity to figure the rest out." Gianna leaned into him, savoring the solid feel of him beside her. "Tell me about the future, our future." "We'll travel like I promised," Soren said. "See the world, but we'll also work. You'll be a remarkable liaison, Gianna. Already you've accomplished more than I dared hope. You're going to change both our worlds for the better." "We'll do it together," Gianna said. "That's the important part. Not me, not you. Us." "Us," Soren agreed. He turned her in his arms, kissed her softly. "My queen, my love, my Gianna." "My king," Gianna replied. "My Soren, my forever." Around them, the court celebrated, but they were in their own world, wrapped in each other. And Gianna knew, with absolute certainty, that she had made the right choice. This was where she belonged. This was home. The celebration wound down eventually, guests departing into the night. When the last vampire had left, Soren took Gianna's hand and led her up to the roof of the mansion. The stars were brilliant overhead, sharper than she'd ever seen them with human eyes. "I used to come up here when I felt lonely," Soren said quietly. "Before I met you, I'd stand here and look at the stars and wonder if I'd ever find someone who understood me, who saw past the power and the title to the man underneath. Did you ever think you'd find her in a night market chasing you down with a handful of gold? Gianna asked. Soren laughed. No, I expected many things, but never that. Never you. You were a gift I didn't know I needed. The feeling's mutual, Gianna said. She leaned against him, fitting perfectly into his side. So what happens now? Where do we go from here? Anywhere, Soren said. Everywhere. We have time, Gianna. Centuries of it. We can take it slow, explore every possibility, build a life together that spans ages. I want to go back to nursing eventually, Gianna said. Or something like it. I still want to help people. Then we'll find a way, Soren promised. Perhaps you can work with vampires who are injured or ill, or humans who need care but can't access traditional medicine. Your healing gift doesn't end just because you're immortal now. And you? Gianna asked. What do you want? I have what I want, Soren said simply. You, a kingdom at peace, a future that looks brighter than any past. That's more than enough. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Gianna thought about the girl she'd been just weeks ago. Tired nurse, living a small life, never expecting anything extraordinary. That girl had seen a man drop his purse and had made the simple choice to return it. And that one act of honesty had changed everything. Only you would return it, Gianna murmured, remembering Soren's words that first night. What? Soren asked. That's what you said, when I gave you back your gold. You said only I would return it. It's true, Soren said. Out of everyone in that market, you were the only one who chose honesty over opportunity. That's who you are, Gianna. That's why I fell in love with you. I fell in love with you because you valued that, Gianna said. Because you saw something worth loving in simple decency. You could have anyone, Soren, any vampire, any human who knew what you were, but you chose me. I chose you because you're remarkable, Soren corrected. And I would choose you again, every time. In every lifetime. Good thing we've got eternity then, Gianna said with a smile. Plenty of time to keep choosing each other. Forever won't be long enough, Soren said. He pulled her closer, kissed her under the stars. But it's a start. In the months that followed, they settled into their new life together. Gianna took on her role as liaison with dedication, mediating disputes and facilitating cooperation between the vampire and human worlds. She found she had a gift for diplomacy, for seeing all sides of an issue and finding solutions that satisfied everyone. Soren governed his kingdom with the same integrity he'd always shown, but now there was a lightness to him that hadn't been there before. He smiled more, laughed more. He included Gianna in every decision, asked her opinion on matters of state. They ruled together, partners in every sense, and in private, they were simply two people in love. They traveled, as Soren had promised. Venice at midnight, Paris in the spring, Cairo at dawn. Gianna saw the world through new eyes, eternal eyes, and marveled at its beauty. They collected art together, filling the mansion with treasures from every era. They read together in the library, curled up on the sofa while rain drummed against the windows. They learned each other's rhythms and preferences, all the small details that make up a life. And they fed the bond between them, that silver thread that tied vampire mates together. Every day it grew stronger, deeper, until Gianna could barely remember what it had felt like to be separate from Soren. One evening, a year after her turning, they returned to the night market where they'd first met. It was autumn again, the air crisp and cool, the vendor stalls bright with lights and laughter. Do you remember? Soren asked as they walked through the crowd. How could I forget? Gianna said. I saw you drop your purse and I chased you down. Best decision I ever made. Best thing that ever happened to me, Soren corrected. He pulled her into a quiet alcove, away from the press of people. I want to give you something. He reached into his coat and pulled out a box. When Gianna opened it, she found a ring. Simple white gold, set with a black opal that matched her necklace. We're already mated, Soren said, bound by vampire law. But I want the human symbol too. I want to marry you, Gianna, in every way, by every tradition. Will you? Gianna felt tears prick her eyes, though she couldn't actually cry anymore. Yes, she breathed. Yes, of course, yes. Soren slipped the ring onto her finger, kissed her hand. My wife, my queen, my everything. My husband, Gianna said, trying out the word. My king, my Soren. They married a month later in a ceremony that blended vampire tradition with human custom. The vampire court attended, elegant and formal. Gianna's family came too, though they believed she'd moved abroad and was marrying a wealthy businessman. It hurt to lie to them, but Gianna knew the truth would hurt more. Magnus presided, reading vows in Latin that echoed through the underground chamber. Katerina stood as witness for Soren. Lucian gave Gianna away, since her own father couldn't understand the truth of what she'd become. And when they exchanged rings and sealed their vows with a kiss, the entire court erupted in celebration. Music filled the chamber, centuries-old instruments playing melodies that made Gianna's new vampire heart soar. Happy, Soren murmured against her lips. Deliriously, Gianna replied. This is perfect. We're perfect. We're just getting started, Soren promised. And he was right. Over the years that followed, their love only deepened. They weathered challenges together, political disputes and threats to the peace. But they always stood united, partners in every crisis. Gianna's role as liaison evolved and expanded. She helped establish a medical clinic for vampires who needed healing. She trained other vampires in diplomacy and human relations. She became a voice for compassion and understanding in a world that too often chose fear. And Soren supported her in everything, proud of the woman she'd become. He called her his queen not just in title but in truth, and everyone who saw them together knew their bond was unbreakable. 5 years after her turning, they took a long trip through Europe. Just the two of them, no politics or responsibilities. They walked through museums and sat in cafes and made love in hotels that overlooked ancient cities. They talked about everything and nothing, content in each other's company. One night in Rome, standing in front of the Trevi fountain, Soren turned to Gianna with a serious expression. I want to tell you something, he said. Something I've never told anyone. What is it? Gianna asked. Before I met you, I was tired, Soren said quietly. 300 years of existence, and I was so tired. I'd seen everything, done everything. I was starting to wonder if there was any point in continuing, if I should just step down as king and let myself fade. Gianna's heart clenched. Soren. But then I met you, he continued. And suddenly the world had color again. Purpose. You gave me a reason to keep existing, Gianna. You saved me in ways you'll never fully understand. You saved me too, Gianna said softly. I was living such a small life before you. Working myself to exhaustion, never taking chances, never letting myself want more. You showed me what life could be, what love could be. We saved each other. Soren pulled her close, and they stood together as tourists tossed coins into the fountain around them, making wishes. But Gianna didn't need to make a wish. She had everything she'd ever wanted right here in her arms. A decade after their meeting, Gianna stood in the underground chamber before the council again. But this time she was presenting on behalf of the liaison program she'd built. The initiative had been wildly successful, reducing conflicts between vampires and humans by over 60%. More than that, it had fostered understanding. Humans were beginning to see vampires as people, not monsters. And vampires were remembering what it meant to value human life, human dignity. You've done remarkable work, Magnus said when she finished her presentation. The council is grateful for your service, Queen Gianna. I couldn't have done it without support, Gianna said, glancing at Soren. My king has been my partner in every aspect of this. A good partnership, Magnus observed. It seems your choice to dissolve the blood oath was wise after all, King Soren. Love has proven more valuable than politics. I could have told you that from the start, Soren said dryly, and the council laughed. After the meeting, Soren and Gianna walked through the city together, hand in hand. It was something they did often, just wandering the streets where they'd met, remembering where they'd started. Do you ever regret it? Soren asked. Giving up your human life? Never, Gianna said firmly. I miss my family sometimes. I wish I could tell them the truth. But I wouldn't change my choice. Being with you, building this life together, it's worth everything I gave up. You gave up mortality and gained eternity, Soren said. I gave you forever and received the same in return. It seems a fair trade. More than fair, Gianna agreed. She stopped, pulled him into an alcove similar to the one where they'd first stood together. I love you, more every day. I didn't think that was possible, but it is. Eternity is a long time to keep loving someone, Soren said, but he was smiling. Are you sure you're up for it? Try me, Gianna challenged. So he did. He kissed her there in the shadows, deep and passionate and full of promises. And Gianna kissed him back with everything she had, pouring centuries of future devotion into that single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, Soren rested his forehead against hers. My greatest treasure, he murmured, the woman who returned my gold and stole my heart. Best exchange I ever made, Gianna said. They walked home together through the city streets, past the night market where everything had started. The vendors were packing up for the evening, the lights dimming. But Gianna and Soren had their own light, the bond between them glowing like a beacon. And as they disappeared into the night, two eternal beings bound by love and choice, the market street settled into quiet. Tomorrow it would fill again with people, with life, with the endless cycle of humanity. But tonight, it stood as a monument to the moment when one honest act had changed two lives forever. When a girl had returned lost gold and a king had recognized a treasure far more valuable. Love, trust, honesty, partnership. The things that mattered in any lifetime. The things that lasted through eternity. 20 years after that night in the market, Soren and Gianna stood on the balcony of their estate, watching the sun set. Gianna had learned to tolerate brief exposure to sunlight, a rare gift among vampires. Soren stood in the shadows, unable to join her, but content to watch her face turn toward the fading light. Still beautiful, he said. After all these years, still the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The sunset? Gianna teased. You, Soren corrected. He held out his hand, and she came to him, stepping into the shadows willingly, because she'd learned that there was beauty in darkness too, when you shared it with the right person. 20 years, Gianna said. It feels like yesterday and forever all at once. That's eternity for you, Soren said. Time becomes fluid when you have enough of it, but every moment with you still feels precious, finite, worth savoring. They stood together as the last light faded from the sky and stars began to emerge. Somewhere in the house, Lucian was handling correspondence. In the city, vampires and humans were going about their evening, the peace between them strong and stable. And here, in this moment, Soren and Gianna were simply together. Two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had fought for their love and won. Thank you, Gianna said softly. For what? For dropping your purse that night, she said with a smile. For testing people. For being you. For seeing something in me worth keeping. Thank you for being honest, Soren replied. For choosing to return what you found instead of taking what you could. For being the kind of person who makes the world better just by existing in it. We make a good team, Gianna said. The best, Soren agreed. Partners, equals, mates, in every way that matters. They kissed under the stars, a kiss that held 2 decades of love and centuries more of promise. And when they finally drew apart, both were smiling. This was their happily ever after. Not an ending, but a continuing. Not perfect, but real. And it had all started with one simple act of honesty, one moment of choosing right over easy. The gold had been returned. The hearts had been given freely. And love, as it turned out, was worth more than any treasure. Forever and always.